Hiya, good morning. My name is Owen. Welcome to the cupboard. Today I'm going to be talking about everything that I read in June. So I read 5 books in June, starting with Equal Rites by Terry Pratchett. Now, I've talked about the Discworld series before, and that's what this is. I think it's the fifth or fourth one in the series. I can't really remember. Well, it's only the third one. It's the third one in the series. Unlike the first two that follow the same characters, this one follows a completely different set of characters. However, it's all in the same world. So, as you can probably tell from the title, this book is centered around a conversation about gender roles. However, it did take me far too long to realise that that's what the title meant. So we're following Esk, and she is a wizard. However, girls are not allowed to be wizards. She becomes a wizard by sort of a mistake at her birth, where the way that wizards are created is that a different wizard who's about to die gives over his staff to this newborn baby, and the wizard that gave her staff found out that she was a girl and just sort of went, wow, well, it's done now, and then died. So, and then it just sort of, the story goes from there. Like I've said before, these books are just fun. The imagination of Terry Pratchett is just incredible. Like, yeah, there's just no other way to say it. They're just really enjoyable little books. It's basically a journey into becoming a wizard. It's sort of a coming of age story, but not in the sort of usual sense. She's traveling through the world to try and find the unknown university, which is a place only for wizards that only wizards can go to learn how to be a wizard and control their magic. The problem that Esk is having is that she doesn't know how to control her magic, and so things are happening out with that, and she's struggling to sort of maintain the safety of the people around her and herself. And she's also dealing with understanding her place in the world and what it means to be a wizard and to be a girl, and where her future can go, and how that compares to what she wants. She knows pretty early on that she's interested in magic and she's attracted to it as a concept, I suppose, as any child would be, but in this world, magic is prevalent and it's just sort of a known thing. Her granny is a witch, and her granny represents sort of the old fashioned understanding of what is proper and what is right for women and girls in this world. And her granny is a witch because she has magic and she's a woman, so therefore she is a witch. And that's perfectly fine for her. Her granny is actually quite opinionated, and it's quite interesting to see how her different views are understood by the people around her and by herself. In terms of like witchy things, she doesn't like brooms and stuff like that. It's all interesting because it's not cut and dry. There's a lot of nuance in it, and I really enjoyed that. This was published in 1987, and for a, I wouldn't say old book. I mean, it's an older book. For a book written in that time, I was pleasantly surprised because it very easily could have been, a product of its time. It felt like it was written in good faith, is what I'm trying to say. It felt like he was truly trying to make a point and not, not talking down and not making fun. That was Equal Rites by Terry Pratchett. The next book, oh, the next book I read was this book, Show Me Where It Hurts by Claire Gleason. Now, this was on my TBR, and I was really pleased to get round to it because I bought it a while ago. This book was an experience. This book follows Rachel, who is married. She has got 2 children. Her husband is called Tom, and on the surface, her marriage seems good. But in the opening of this book, Tom decides that he wants to take his own life, and in doing so, he's taking her and her children with him. The way he chooses to do this is to drive the car off of the road, with the children and with Rachel in the car also. It's a very good exploration of grief and I suppose and mental health in general. She gives him a lot of grace. I think her husband. She gives her husband a lot of grace. I think it would be very easy to write a book like this and frame the husband as this like black and white villain, and to have the whole drama be it was his doing and it's her anger towards him and how he has ruined her life completely. And I'm not saying that they didn't frame it like that. What I'm saying is you saw as Rachel came to terms with what her life is like now because of Tom, but also in spite of Tom, and how Tom's mental health is not entirely his fault. She wasn't excusing Tom. That I think that's the main thing to take away from is yes, he was at fault because it was his actions that resulted in her children's death. And of course, she's going to feel bad about that. Of course, she's going to put some blame on Tom because ultimately it was his fault. But there's also this development in her character where she's coming to understand how and why Tom is the way he is and what brought Tom to this conclusion. It's not exactly a move away from blame, but it's sort of a move towards understanding. And that's what I think is the strongest thing about this is it is such a informed take on mental health. It's not a complete villainization of it. It felt true to life, and it felt that the author truly understood how a person could react in this scenario. I think the biggest thing for me is it didn't feel that the author sacrificed realism for dramatic effect. There are 100 ways you could have taken this book, and there are 100 ways you could have sensationalized this action, this event, that would diminish the realism in such a way that it would also take away from the quality. If I were to give you an example, there is a point in the book, I'm not going to be very specific so I don't spoil it, but there's a point in the book where the author could have gone one of two ways, and the second decision would be theoretically more entertaining or more sort of cinematic in a way on the page, and sort of leaning more into like a thriller, a more fictionalized version of reality. And they didn't do that. They chose to take something that could be seen as more boring, but they went that way because that's what a human would do. I really appreciate that when they're taking such a heavy topic and really exploring it inside this one character. And yeah, I thought it was really strong. Okay, next one. The next book I read in June was If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio. I touched on this in my TBR video, and I said then that I was just having a brilliant time with it and I hadn't yet finished it, but I have now finished it, and it was just as good as I thought it was going to be. I am genuinely so pleased that I picked this book up because it wasn't even on my radar. I just happened to see it. It's definitely a contender to one of the best books I've read this year. Like, genuinely. I think in saying that though, and I probably said this in my TBR video as well, it's very much you will hate it or you'll love it sort of book. This book opens with Oliver, and we learn that Oliver has been in prison for the last 10 years for a murder that he may or may not have committed. The detective that was on his case comes to visit him, and he's had enough. He's going to retire. He sits down in front of Oliver and he basically says, I don't care, I'm not looking for justice anymore. All I want is to know what actually happened that night. And the condition for Oliver to give him this information is basically, one, I'm getting out in a couple of months and I will not tell you anything until I get out of prison. Two, that anything that he does say will not incriminate anyone else. If he gives him all the information, then it cannot come down on anyone else's head. And three, that the detective needs to understand that all of this information, it's not an admission of guilt. He's not apologizing. And it just all goes from there. And it's such a strong opening because it's so specific to the character. And when we talk about characterization, it's just like I'm immediately in his head. The rest of the book, we fade back into 10 years prior. And Oliver is at a performing arts school, a really prestigious one. And basically, he's in his third year, which is the final year for them. And his class has been whittled down to 7 people. This school is really known for being very specific and very harsh when it comes to getting rid of students. So now he's in his third and final year. He is surrounded by the best of the best, basically. And Oliver's main takeaway from this is that he is the worst of the group. So this school in particular only studies Shakespeare, and they just live and breathe Shakespeare. All they ever do is read and recite and learn the words by heart to all of the plays that they're going to do. So, like I said before, this is the point, I think, that could be either that you love it or you hate it. It's very heavy on the Shakespeare quotes. But also, Shakespeare in itself is so intertwined within the plot. Two of the main events that I can remember in my head that really stick out in my head are when they're performing these plays. The plays in themselves are sort of mirrors of what's happening to the people, to the characters. The whole idea of this book is that the more that Oliver lives with these people, his classmates, because it's like a boarding school, the more that he lives with these people and gets to know these people, he's realizing that they're beginning to mirror the types of roles that they are accustomed to playing. It's one of the things that they point out on the back of the book. It says, Oliver noticed that his talented classmates seemed to play the same characters on stage and off. So the whole book is basically him reciting to the detective what happened in the past. So you get this really interesting tone because it's him looking back, so it's all very reflective, but you still feel like you're in the moment, that you're experiencing it with them. It's such an experience because it really feels like you're front and center. You don't always get that with books, and I really think that's the difference in the writing. It's such a I would say it's such a vivid experience, is what I want to say, but it's not even that the writing is particularly descriptive. It's that like the author has written the characters in such a way that you can really start to predict the way that they're going to act, or the way that they could act, and that's where most of the threat comes from. Like the that tension that you feel when you're reading it, is you're thinking, oh my goodness, what is this person going to do next, or what is this person capable of, because you're just sort of seeing through his eyes who these people are and who they are becoming as well, as they grow and as they get these pressures from outside, from the school, from other things. I would say it's like a proper character study, but it's not just that. There's so much more to it. I think it's just a very good book, you know. I think it's everything is intertwined, everything's connected. Like the characters and the plot and the place is such a rich experience. Even once you've finished it and you look back and you think, oh, this, if I read this in isolation, like this scene or this interaction, perhaps it would feel unrealistic, or it would feel awfully dramatic for what it is when it's standing alone. But once you're in it, it's really just like you want to just keep reading and keep reading. I think it was really good. So yeah, that was If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio. Brilliant. Next book I read I don't have on hand because I got it out the library. The next book I read is called Don't Let the Forest In by C.J. Drews. Now, I had seen a couple of people talk about this, that's why I booked it out of the library. This book follows Andrew. Now, he is in school. This is a YA novel. I will say it reads sort of on the younger end of YA, and for me personally, that's sort of outside of what I usually enjoy, but anyway, not the point. We're following Andrew. Andrew and his twin sister go to a boarding school for their schooling. You get the impression pretty quickly that his his dad is very distant and his mother isn't around. I can't remember if she was dead. I'm pretty sure his mother was dead. It's one of those things that sort of don't make that much impact on the plot. His father came into a lot of money, and so he's off doing business or whatever, and they're in this boarding school by themselves. So Andrew and his twin sister they seem to have only one friend, and that is a boy, and I've forgotten his name. I'm going to call him Thomas. I think it was Thomas. So Andrew and his twin sister and Thomas, they are sort of like this proper tight-knit group. And we learn that something happened before summer break, and now that they're back in school, it's the first day back at this boarding school, and his twin sister leaves while he's trying to talk to his dad, and he's getting increasingly worried that things are different this year. Things feel different, and he really doesn't know what to do with himself. So he's looking around for Thomas, and eventually finds his friend. And we're introduced to Thomas through Andrew, through his perspective. Andrew's like main thing is that he likes to write stories, and these stories are not your normal kind of stories. They're like nightmarish or monstrous. And Thomas, on the other hand, is an artist. And what Andrew loves so much about Thomas is that he doesn't find his stories repulsive. He actually really enjoys to draw the creatures that are in his stories. So Andrew likes to write, and Thomas likes to draw, and that's sort of all you need to know, really. So that's like the main attributes that they get as the characters, and this is quite integral to the plot. There's sort of a mystery element to this because our main character Andrew doesn't remember what happened last semester, before summer break, before everything went wrong. He doesn't remember what happened, and he's coming into the school year with no information, but this doesn't really seem to bother him. He seems more focused on what's happening right now in the present. He wants to see Thomas again, and even though he's had a hard time at this school, everyone is treating him like the teachers and his father is treating him like this fragile thing that he is somehow damaged. But of course, you're getting this through his perspective, so this is how he's viewing himself. feels like this small thing that people keep having to look after or protect, and he feels weak and he's not got a particularly good sense of self. The main thing about this is that they used to be able to allow to go into the forest that surrounds the school, and this year it's changed. They put a big fence up. They're not allowed to go out there anymore. Everybody's banned from this forest. But of course, Andrew and Thomas, that was their thing. They loved to go into the forest. So they sneak out into the forest anyway. And the forest in this book sort of becomes a character in itself. The writer describes it as this living thing. As the plot progresses and as Andrew becomes more and more concerned about what reality is, whether or not the things that he's seeing are actually there, the forest plays a big role in that. Essentially, this is a monster story, and it is interesting in that. I won't say it was bad. I think it was just fine. I think, and that's not a criticism. I think it was just a book that was perhaps on the younger side, that maybe it's just not written for me. It very much felt like a younger teen book that was sort of like very much of that age, and I wasn't like particularly fond of going back into that headspace sort of thing. There were a couple of things that were sort of sticky for me. Mainly, it felt a bit repetitive in the actual word choice. The author was very fond of using descriptions that were, it was this and this, but the two things are a good thing and a bad thing. For example, they would say something like, he was beautiful and horrifying, or something like that, like having two opposite things together, and to say, oh, look at that, isn't that interesting? So the thing with that is, it is an interesting idea on its head, and I did enjoy it the first time I read it. But the further I got into the book, and the more that the author did the same thing over and over, they weren't the same words in particular, but it was the same idea. But the thing about it was, it never went further than that. Like it felt sort of surface level. Like the author came to a description and thought of their theme, like the thing that they're trying to say with the book, and went, oh, that'll be great there. But then never went just that little bit further. The author would describe something as beautiful and horrifying, for example. They wouldn't tell me what it actually looked like. They wouldn't tell me like the details of what it was I was looking at, or why it was, or why Andrew felt that way about that certain thing. It wasn't this egregious repetition. It wasn't horrific, you know what I mean? It was just something I noticed because I think I wasn't particularly in the world. So I was more open to see maybe the flaws in it. It's worth mentioning that there is a very strong queer undertone to the whole thing. Like the first page, the opening page is something along the lines of Andrew telling Thomas that he's in love with him, but through a story. So he has the benefit of the doubt if Thomas doesn't feel the same way. There's also some asexual representation in this book, which I do think was interesting. It's definitely always good to have, because there is so little asexual representation in fiction generally. I will say that, because this is not something that I can completely understand, because I don't experience it myself, I don't I can't really speak onto the quality of the representation, but I will say it was nice to have it there, and it's worth mentioning. So yeah, that was good. So aside from that, I wouldn't say that there was anything like remarkable about it. I didn't hate it. Like, I didn't have a bad time. It was just sort of, oh, I read that, you know. Anyway, I would, if it sounds interesting, I definitely would give it a go. I think the thing is, I enjoy monster stories, definitely. And especially when they've got that queer bent to them, they can be really, really interesting with what they're trying to say. I think the thing is, with this book, the monsters were monsters for the sake of monsters. You know what I mean? There's a book that comes to mind by Andrew Joseph White called Hell Followed With Us, and that book did monsters just excellently. If I were to recommend a queer book about monsters, it would be that one. So that was Don't Let the Forest In by C.G. Drews. Right, one more to go. One more book to go. I also don't have a physical copy of this book, but it was Red Rising by Pierce Brown. I have been waiting on this book to come into the library for such a long time now, and I was so pleased when it finally did. It feels like at the moment everybody's talking about Red Rising, so I finally got around to reading it, and I wasn't disappointed. Well, like I said, I wasn't disappointed, but I wasn't as impressed as I expected to be of it. It was really interesting, but it very much felt like a first book in a series. It was like, okay, we did all of this stuff, but like, what is the purpose? And it felt like it was just filling a gap before we got to to the second book or the third book, or I'm not sure how many books are actually in the series. I will say that's not completely fair. It was a good book, and it definitely does stand on its own. It has merit on its own. I think perhaps maybe it's just not the kind of book that I enjoy. I expected the sci-fi elements to be more sci-fi, if that makes sense. Like, yes, we're on Mars. Yes, there is like different gravity and we're mining and stuff like that, but even though we're on Mars, it didn't particularly feel like it was necessary. Like it felt like this could just be Earth, but a futuristic version of it where they had different, technologies and stuff like that. Felt like you could still have the same narrative but on Earth. Like it didn't really feel like it impacted the plot that much. Well, it did impact the plot on a colonization standpoint. The whole reason that our main character is in the situation that he's in a mining colony, and his I've not even explained what it's about. Okay, let me explain what it's about. So the book is called Red Rising because the way that society works now. So we're in space. This is all over the different worlds. The human race has left Earth and spread about over the planets in our solar system. Within this society, there is a hierarchy in which the people are divided up by color, and this is a product of birth. You are born into your color. The Reds are essentially slave workers. They are miners. They are starving. They're working for their food. They're getting injured. They're disposable basically. Each different color sort of represents a different job in a way, and the golds are right at the top. They are the pinnacle of human evolution. They control everything. They are perfect. They're beautiful. They claim to be more advanced than the average person. They are both like physically and biologically, but also artificially stronger, better in sort of every sense. That is their ideology. So our main character, he lives and works in the mines. He's never seen the surface of the planet. It is the Reds' job to dig out this. It's called helium-3. It's just something that they can use to make Mars habitable. So that is their job, and that is their one mission in life. It's what they are born into. They are just miners, and they live under the ground, and they are intimately controlled by their betters, the people above them in this hierarchy. The thing about this is there is this massive emphasis on control. The Reds cannot speak out of turn. They cannot do anything that they are not allowed to do. And within this, the result of acting out is death. If you do anything out of turn, you will be hanged, publicly hanged, in front of everyone. And because of the lack of gravity, then someone in their family has to pull them down because the gravity won't kill them. And this is something that is just normal for them. This is custom. Even though our main character is, of course, angry about this, there is no way for him to rebel. There is no way for the people to do anything about it, or so it seems. So that is where we're starting. I think the best part of the book was sort of a third of the way in, where the character's world really just opens up, and it just feels immediately so overwhelming, but not in a bad way. And things just fall out in front of him, and you realize how little he actually knows. And that part I thought was incredibly well done. It was a proper shift in understanding for the reader as well as the main character, because the thing about living under this systematic control is that you don't understand what you don't know and what you're not told. So the only thing you can do is trust the information that you've been given. You don't even consider the possibility that what you've been told is wrong. I think that part of it is so interesting. And clearly the author really understands power dynamics in the way that they affect civilizations, not just on an interpersonal level. But that exploration was done really, really well. I don't know how much I want to talk about the other 2/3 of the book, because it sort of spoils that realization, and I think that realization is really well done, like I said. So I would want you, if you're going to read this book, I would really want you to have that and not have it spoiled. So I think what I'll say is our main character enters into something, and I expected that something to be much shorter than it was. I didn't expect the whole book to be that one thing. and because of that one thing wasn't real, it was a simulation that he got into that he had to play along with. It didn't feel like it mattered in the way that it ought to. And I know that it did because of what happened at the end, but while I was reading it, I was like, why do I care? This is a simulation of exactly what he does not want to do. Exactly, we're going against everything that he believes. Why do I, as a reader, care about all the movements? I just felt like it dragged out a bit, and I think maybe that is not on the book. I think that is on me. I think it's just not my kind of thing. I think I just don't like that sort of strategic kind of book. You know what I mean? If you've read it, you know what I mean. If you don't, then I'm trying to not to spoil it. Yeah, I think I'll just leave it there. I will say it was very good. It was much better than Don't Like the Forest In, I'll tell you that. It was just on a different level. It was very good, so I'm being nitpicky because I'm holding it to sort of a higher standard because of the actual quality of the writing. It was good. However, there were just some things that I didn't quite enjoy. But I think I definitely will pick up the second book. Yeah, so that's it. Okay. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you for watching. Let me know what you think if you've read any of these books. I'd love to hear about them in the comments. So that's me. I hope you have a nice day.